Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Authority Board meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. It is Wednesday, May 18th. It is now 6 o'clock, and I am calling the meeting to order. And could you please give your attention to this short video?
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of Assembly Bill 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should mute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice for public comment guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you. And Terry Ann, could we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Arnrich?
Here.
Commissioner Butt?
Here.
Commissioner Geringer?
Here.
Commissioner Hudson?
Here.
Commissioner McGallion?
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Here.
Commissioner Nowak?
Here.
Commissioner Thorpe?
Here.
Commissioner White is absent. Vice Chair Glover?
Here.
Chair Kelly?
Here.
Representative Foley?
Present.
Representative Powers?
Here.
Representative Worth?
Here.
Check, I saw a few coming in. So it looks like everyone is present with Commissioner
Dave.
White absent.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to welcome Tim McGallion here, who's here as an alternate tonight. Tim, which city are you from?
I'm representing the city of Concord.
Welcome. Thank you. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Commissioner Arnrich. So could you please mute your mic?
Thank you. Please join me by placing your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Too.
Thank you, Noel. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is public comment for items that are not on the agenda tonight. Terry Ann, do we have any written public comment? Can you unmute yourself?
We have not received any written public comment.
Okay, and is there any member of the public that wishes to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? If so, could you please raise your hand? Terry Ann, do we see any speakers?
No public comment.
Okay, well, let's move on then. We do not have any presentations tonight, so the next item is the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to pull an item from consent? No. Terry Ann, any written public comments on consent items?
No written public comments.
And is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on the consent calendar? No? Then if not, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion Hudson.
Okay,
Second,
motion by Hudson, second.
Geringer.
second by Geringer. Terry Ann, can we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Arnrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Geringer,
Aye.
thank you. Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner McGallion,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
okay, Vice Chair Glover,
Aye.
Chair Kelly.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner White absent.
Okay, thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
now we're moving on to our regular agenda items. And the first item tonight is from the Administration Projects Committee. It's going to be presented by Hisham Noemi on innovative deployments to enhance arterials grant, Central Transit Signal Priority TSP system. Welcome, Hisham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. Let me share my screen. Hopefully you can see it. Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. I'm happy to present this item. We are asking for your approval today to execute the contract with GTT, as well as the funding agreements with the City of Concord and the City of Walnut Creek. This will allow us to kickstart this unique and important project. Transit agencies have long implemented transit signal priority using optical readers, which require equipment on the bus, as well as equipment on the signal mast arms. While these systems work, the buses have to be at a certain location for the request to be triggered. It also doesn't allow you to do conditional priority where you either get it or you don't. What we're trying to implement here is a centralized cloud-based transit signal priority system that avoids installation of additional equipment on the bus or the traffic signal. We also want to implement conditional priority, not just priority, where priority to the bus is given only when certain conditions are met, like when the bus is behind schedule, or for example, at least have 30% of the passenger on it. That way we're optimizing person throughput through the intersections without unnecessarily delaying the side street traffic. We have been working closely with our partners that you see on this slide to implement this project. We have been doing that for a while now, and the roles are listed, but just to emphasize what each agency will be doing, CCTA will be holding the contract to deploy, operate, and maintain the TSP system for the next 4 years. MTC is the funding agency for the project, and they manage the system engineering contract. And the cities of Walnut Creek and Concord is where we will be implementing the project. We will be basically using their signals and their intersections. This they will also ensure that their traffic signal controllers are upgraded where we're implementing the system, and the communication channels are in place. And last but not least, County Connection will benefit from the system as they run the transit service in both cities. And as far as I understand it, this will be the first TSP implementation in County Connection service area. The goals of the project are to improve transit reliability and schedule adherence that will make transit more competitive and hopefully increase transit ridership. With less stops, we are hoping to reduce fuel use and emissions. And if the system works, we plan to expand it along other bus routes and other cities. The project area in Concord is shown in the slide. There are 2 routes that cover 35 intersections. The decision on which routes to include in the study area was mainly made by our partners at County Connection and the cities, based on existing ridership, on-time performance, as well as other factors. This is the project area in the city of Walnut Creek. It's mainly in the downtown area. It covers 31 intersections and 2 bus routes. In terms of funding, the project is funded by the IDEA grant. 2 separate awards were made by MTC to CCTA and to the city of Walnut Creek, totaling about $1.2 million. Because of County Connection serves both cities, these projects were combined early on, with CCTA now taking the lead. The grant will fund, as I mentioned earlier, deployment, operation and maintenance for 3 years, necessary upgrades to signal controllers in both cities, as well as consultant help and a study to evaluate the success of the project. This slide shows one of the 2 concepts on how the system was envisioned to work. Under the first concept, the system was envisioned to communicate with the CleverCat County Connection dispatch system and with the traffic signal controller at the intersection near the bus through the City Traffic Management Center. And under this case, this decision to grant priority is made at the signal controller. Under the second concept, the TSP system actually bypasses communicating with the CleverCat system. Instead, it communicates directly with the bus. And the decision to grant priority is still made at the traffic signal controller to ensure that it's based on what's happening at that intersection. This is the option that we'll be implementing because it turns out, based on the RFP process we had, it is actually the cheaper, faster way to go, as it avoids costly upgrades that are necessary to the CleverCat equipment and software. In regard to the selection of the vendor for this project, we issued the RFP back in September 2021. We had 6 good proposals. We held the interviews in December and finalized the ranking in January. GTT, Global Traffic Technology, was ranked the highest by a panel of 6 people. The GTT solution was the most cost-effective among the group, as it relied on existing equipment on the bus, as well as available data from the internet on schedules as well as occupancy. This is the criteria that we use to evaluate the proposals, and the staff report shows the ranking and scores for each vendor. And we anticipate the project will take about 8 to 12 months to implement. It does require close coordination with the cities of Concord and Walnut Creek in their effort to upgrade some of their traffic signal controllers in the study area. We will do, of course, everything we can to ensure successful implementation of this pilot so it can be expanded to other routes and other cities as well. We are seeking your approval today of contract number 582 with GTT for an amount not to exceed $245,937, and the funding agreements with the cities of Walnut Creek and Concord for the implementation of the central TSP system. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you, Hisham. Are there questions from the board? Newell?
Thank you, Hisham. Just a couple of questions and more on the technical side. You mentioned it, in order for this priority to be kicked in at these intersections, you'd have to have a 30% occupancy. What's the technology that determines that? Is it automatic, or is it the driver just pushes a button and says, I get to go through?
No, it's all automated. There are automatic passenger counters on the buses, and 30% was just an example. These will be parameters set by the system operator as we test the system to see where it's what percentage will be suitable and how much the bus has to be delayed to be granted priority. But yeah, we don't anticipate the driver to be doing anything other than driving the bus.
And what's the average occupancy of buses now?
For these 2 routes, I'll have to find out. Actually, I don't have that information, but we will find out. And based on that, those parameters will be set.
Okay, because I was going to say, these are probably likely the routes to have the highest occupancy, because unfortunately, most of the other ones are below 10%. So I'm just wondering, how is this, are we going to get a good demonstration? Do we have is there something like free bus passes to go along with this? Because if we want to get a robust testing of this, we need to have bodies on there. And if we can really then leverage this out and demonstrate what we've accomplished from it. So just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Good points.
Tim McGallion?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's worked on this. This actually seems exciting, especially the coordination between Concord and Walnut Creek. Along Newell's question as well, in terms of that rollout strategy, I would imagine we're going to see something so that we can push this so that it can be a viable test. Is that planned at this point?
Yes, the plan, as I mentioned, this is a pilot. We will evaluate its success at the end. And the plan is to expand it to other routes in both cities as well as in other cities along County Connection service area.
Well, the marketing side of it, kind of hey, this is available, kind of come see the, newest technology at work kind of a deal.
That's right. There will be public information campaign with this to tell people that, the goal is really to increase transit ridership. That's really the goal of the project. So we're going to be hopefully giving transit more competitive travel times so more people can use it.
Okay. You mentioned that there's going to be right now the initial cost is covered under this, but then after 3 years, the cost then will shift back to the city of Concord and Walnut Creek. Do we know what the kind of ongoing cost looks like? Is it something that's significant or is it pretty minimal?
We do actually have that from the vendor. I don't recall the numbers off the top of my head, but if I have to guess, they're about $20,000 a year. So we haven't really talked to Concord or Walnut Creek what happens after the 3 years. It's not necessary that both cities will take on the operation and maintenance of the system. CCTA still wants to be involved in that. And that's something we will have to bring to our board to discuss.
Okay. And then my final question is, as it relates to the true integration piece of kind of making the decisions, and this may be a bit more of a question for Tim possibly too, as it relates back to kind of developing that smart network that we've been talking about as well. So is this kind of a part of that? Is this almost a pilot to the bigger project as well? And do you mind kind of talking about how that's all going to kind of work together in terms of that hub, right? Isn't that the idea? Like, it's smart signals for transit. Is this the same kind of office infrastructure is going to be using the same smart signals for the cars as we're trying to program the stuff going on with 680 and Innovate 680 project?
Yeah, Tim, let me know if you want me to jump in.
We have great communication at CCTA, so I think Hisham is perfectly equipped to answer this question.
So we do have basically, as our vision, as you mentioned, we have the county-wide signal upgrade system that's going to be funded with OBAG and submitted to MTC. That's like a $25 million project that will look at the routes of regional significance in all the county. And then we have a parallel effort that we're doing. We just got some earmarked funds, 1.2 million in Concord, the town of Danville, as well as the city of Pittsburgh got some money as well. We will be testing, basically those also will be pilots that will be testing additional equipment, detection equipment, communication to the infrastructure and so on. And the outcome of this project, the TSP project, as well as the pilots that are being funded by the earmarks, will be used basically to help inform the overall county-wide smart signal system upgrade project. We anticipate some of the intersections you saw as part of this project will also be equipped with additional equipment once we do the testing in Danville, in Pittsburgh, and in other intersection in Concord. If there were if we can basically demonstrate the benefit of this additional equipment in detecting and reducing fatalities and helping with Vision Zero and communication with autonomous vehicles, we will be adding that onto this project at these intersections in this project. Similarly, with the TSP implementation, once we prove it is successful, I mean, we will learn how the cloud-based system will work, and the goal is to implement it basically throughout the county, not just in the county connection service area. We want to find a cheap cloud-based solution that minimizes installation of equipment on the bus as well as at the signal controllers. That's really our goal, while still dealing with all modes that use that intersections: pedestrian, bicyclists, transit, as well as vehicles.
Thank you.
Miss Tim, I hope I didn't miss anything. Please jump in.
No, appreciate it. Thank you very much for all that.
Maureen?
Yes, as the bus representative, I really appreciate this proposal. Buses are an unutilized resource, and whatever we can do to get them picking up more passengers and delivering them where they want to go, the better. So I'm really, really happy that this pilot project is going on. Hope to see some, kind of over on the other side of the hill, if it proves, productive. I have a couple of questions. One is, are the vehicles that are being used, the buses that are being used, already in service? So are they taking from their fleet a number of buses to be dedicated to this project?
There are about 120 buses, if I'm correct, in County Connection fleet. We are basically implementing this using 31 buses. A total of 31 buses of the 120 will be basically ready to use this system. Of course, if it is successful, the plan is to expand it to the rest of the fleet. And since we'll be using existing equipment on the buses, we don't anticipate the buses will be taken out of service for this. I mean, there might be some software that needs to be completed, but I mean, we'll make sure that we work closely with County Connection to minimize disruption to their existing service.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true, and that was my question. What kind of disruption, if any, to normal service would there be? So, yeah, thank you for that. The second question is, and other people have brought this up too, is kind of how this is going to be promoted. And you have an 8 to 12 month implementation period. Are you going to start talking about it to the public like before then, so they're aware that they can get on like the first bus or whatever?
Yeah, we haven't really yet figured out when is the best time to be reaching out to the public about this, but our initial focus will be testing, making sure the system works. And that's really the implementation period, the 8 to 12 months. Once it's tested and once we accept the system and we enter into the operation and maintenance period, that's definitely when we need to be reaching out to the public, telling them that we have done improvements, that the schedules will be a lot more reliable, and hopefully inviting them to use transit.
Right. I'm just kind of piggybacking on Newell's comment, that we need numbers. The higher the numbers who actually are on, who take advantage of this pilot program, the more information we'll get. So that's all. Thank you, Hisham.
Thank you.
Amy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, first of all, Hisham, thank you so much for this really superb report. I think we've been talking a lot about the elements, the technological elements of this, and you really brought it all together to illustrate how it will be used to improve service. And I just wanted to offer, some regional perspective on this too. And I think the basis for the partnership with MTC and County Connection and CCTA is really important in the success of this program. When we had the Blue Ribbon Task Force during the COVID, one of the main outcomes of that, one of the main goals was to improve service reliability and reducing the time so that there could be meaningful competition with cars. And the idea, if you recall the Bay Bridge, when the Bay Bridge offered the special lane for carpoolers, people jumped at the chance to use that, not necessarily for the cost, but for the time saving. So the research shows if we can improve and increase the, if we can improve the times that people can or reduce the trip time in transit, then people will come to transit. And there are some really key routes in Contra Costa County that are prime for this. And obviously you start with one and then move on to the other ones, especially when you think of our our linking with BART and some of the transit services in all 4 areas of our county in terms of the service level, the west and central and the east that offer transit services. And so I think the pilot will be excellent. We'll get a lot of good information, just like the pilot we had with Walnut Creek, the electric buses, the trolleys have given us a huge amount of information as we move forward to looking at the state requirements. But one thing I think, and certainly in terms of funding, it's my expectation that this is going to be a huge priority for MTC funding in the future. And so because we will have had this pilot, we will have a good sense of it and be able to implement it in other areas. So I think that the concern, I know, Tim, I totally agree with you, Tim McGallion, about as the city host and the city that has a number of the routes that could potentially really benefit from transit priority would see funding to help to support those efforts. Because obviously the cities don't have the resources and the transit agencies. It parallels the 680 project in terms of using technology. And just so you know that the MTC staff and the commission voted last month to put the Innovate 680 project, as Tim mentioned, Tim Hale mentioned last month, is the highest priority for our mega project applications from the region. So I think that this is going to be a great project, and it's going to be a start of it puts Contra Costa in a really good position to be on the cutting edge of the beta process, so that we're going to be able to, look to funding in the future, because knowing the superb staff resources that we have in these 3 agencies, I think it's going to be great with County Connection. And then again, Maureen, to your point, bringing it to the other operators, the other corridors, things like the San Pablo Avenue corridor project are just getting teed up to do this kind of work. And certainly East County, the transit, we've talked about some of the transit express buses to enhance those. So thank you again, Hisham. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. Madam Chair, sorry, I forgot to do one important thing, which is to introduce the project managers from GTT. We have Craig Carroll, as well as Josh Lehman. I'm not sure if they can turn on their camera and wave hi, but they are with us and they've heard your comments. And thank you all for your comments. We'll make sure this is a successful story at the end.
And Hisham, I would say that, once we know that it's working and working well, we've got to market it, because otherwise for the public, it doesn't exist. And it could just be a simple, 30 seconds, 45-second video where we kind of show before the bus took this long, and wow, hey folks, take a look. Now it's taking, much less time. Hop on the bus and ride it. You can get to where you want to go faster. And, play that on social media, because without that, it doesn't exist in the mind of the public. And you really got to make that point. So hopefully someone can do that somewhere, and it'll be really, really successful. Amy?
Can I just add to that point, Chris? Madam Chair, thank you. And as a matter of fact, serving on our County Connection chair is on this board too. So I know he will agree. We have, chairing the Marketing and Legislative Committee, I'll indicate that County Connection too would have every intention of having this incorporated into a really robust marketing plan, so that we have both agencies, both CCTA and County Connection, really marketing it to the potential, audiences with all the tools we have. And County Connection and all the transit agencies are currently working monthly, with closely with CCTA on the whole aspect of transit marketing and things like that. So that's going to be really important to be doing that, which will happen.
Yeah,
Right.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, Maureen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to make one very brief comment, and that is that we ought to be marketing, when we do this marketing campaign, which I completely agree with, we should probably emphasize younger people. Make sure that the younger people know that this is the way to get to work, that this is the way that you need to, get your childcare. This is the way that you need to go, get your groceries, because it's convenient, it's cheap, it's short, you can do it. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Okay, any other comments here? Terry Ann, do we have any written public comments on this item?
No written public comments.
And does anyone here, Newell, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to make a motion. I thought we were
Okay,
almost
but
ready
let
for
me
that.
ask if there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this item.
No public comments.
Okay, all right, thank you. So Newell, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to make a motion. I'm like everybody excited to see this. I think the number one thing we should expect is not to necessarily see more people riding the bus. That would be the bonus. It's really to work out the technology and the bugs and create priority systems and get it to interface. And if we can make that work, then all of the other things will fall in place. So with that, I would move item number 8A as presented tonight.
Second, Hudson.
Okay, so motion by Arnott, second by Hudson. Any comments? Terry Ann, can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Arnrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Garinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner McGallion,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Glover,
Aye.
Chair Kelly.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner White absent.
Great, thank you. So our next item is also presented by Hisham Noemi, and he's going to discuss the 2022 draft Measure J strategic plan. Now, this is just an informational item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me share my screen. Hopefully you can see my screen. I do have a very short presentation on this item. We are asking you today just for your comments on the 2022 Measure J strategic plan. The final strategic plan will be brought to you in July for your approval after we incorporate any comments you may have. The draft 22 Measure J strategic plan is the 7th update since the first one you adopted in 2007. As you know, we update the strategic plan every 2 to 3 years to determine how and when and how much to appropriate in Measure J funds to different projects. We take into consideration the latest information on the debt service cost, as well as the latest projections of our Measure J sales tax revenue. The highlights of the 22 Measure J strategic plan are included in the staff report in your packet.
Oh, where'd you find that?
And as you may recall, we started working on this update back in September 2021. At the time, you provided us with your direction on key issues that guided the plan. The most important one was the revenue forecast. As you recall, HDL presented their updated revenue forecast at that meeting. The red line on this chart shows what we were projecting in the 2019 Measure J strategic plan, while the black line shows the updated projection you adopted for the 2022 Measure J strategic plan. As you can see from the slope of both lines, our projections assume slower growth moving forward compared to the one in the 2019 strategic plan. Having said that, however, the overall Measure J revenue over the life of the measure, it's still the same. It hasn't changed. It's about $2.588 billion. That's because our actual revenues for the past 3 years have exceeded our original projections. In the process of updating the strategic plan, staff identified about $18 million in Measure J savings from completed projects. The majority of these savings came from projects like the Caldecott Tunnel Fourth Bore, the I-680 southbound carpool lane completion, the Alhambra Creek Bridge in Martinez, and to lesser extent, the Highway 4 widening project. There were no savings realized in this cycle for projects in West County. That is not unexpected because West County had the least amount of Measure J funds for capital projects compared to the other regions. West County basically chose to put most of their share when we developed the expenditure plan back in 2004. They decided to put most of their share in programs as opposed to capital projects. We came to you in February of this year to seek your approval on how to program those $18 million, and you approved the reprogramming of these savings in the same subregions where they were realized and to the projects you see in the slide. This allowed us basically to maintain subregional equity, which is very important factor in Measure J, as well as restore some of the funding that we had to remove of these projects in the 2019 strategic plan. Because the authority board, you chose to issue bonds against our future Measure J revenues early in the measure back in 2009, we were able to deliver those projects and other projects early and under budget. The strategy allowed us to leverage our Measure J funds when the interest rates were low and when the construction bid environment was favorable. At this time, only 12 years into the measure, we have 70% of Measure J projects in the strategic plan constructed or under construction. The program of projects in Appendix A of the strategic plan, as well as the projects fact sheets in Appendix B, reflect that. That's probably the most satisfying part of updating the strategic plan, at least for me, stamping constructed across these fact sheets. While we're not anticipating issuing new bonds at this time, we will continue to look for opportunities to refinance our existing bonds to further cut our debt service costs. The plan does reflect, however, the refinancing we did in June 2021, which eliminated the swap entirely and reduced our debt service by about $5.5 million. In the 2022 strategic plan, we have a total of $754 million programmed in Measure J over the life of the measure for capital projects. At the start of this fiscal year, 689 of the 754, or 92%, have already been expended. We are looking to spend another $47 million over the next 6 years. That is not a lot compared to what we used to spend at the peak of our capital program. I want to end with this slide, which summarizes the 2022 strategic plan, shows the revenue expected, the period covered in the strategic plan, the number of projects programmed, and how many are constructed or under construction, along with other information. I also want to confirm that the draft 22 strategic plan does reflect the request we received from Transpac to reprogram some of the BART funds from the Walnut Creek to TOD to the Fairgates replacement projects in Central County. It also reflects some reprogramming that the town of Danville requested between their projects in the major arterial category. Looking ahead, we have several projects that we were able to secure non-Measure J funds for, and we are currently using Measure J to advance them. For example, we were able to secure $18 million in Trade Corridor Enhancement Program funds. Those are SB1 funds for the 684 interchange. And that money is being matched by $8 million in RM3. However, because RM3 is still under legal litigation, we had to basically use Measure J to move the project in order to secure that $18 million. The strategic plan anticipates that we will still be doing some kind of advancements in the futures for other projects like Innovate 680 to keep those projects moving and to ensure that we are leveraging our funds. And because of that, we project our cash flow will be constrained in year 2024. That could change, of course, if the RM3 legal litigation is resolved before then, or if we're able to advance some of the STIP money that we programmed on Innovate 680. We fortunately have accumulated enough cash in some of the Measure J programs, like the FAIRY program, the TLC program, to help us get through that period. But as an added cushion, or the plan recommends holding off the programming of the TLC, the next cycle of the TLC and the PED-BY program, and for a couple more years until we get through the 2024 cash crunch period. I mean, in 2024, we'll still have some money. I mean, we're not going to go negative, of course, but we will have our cash reserve will go as low as $8 million at that period, if nothing else changes. So with that, I'll be happy to answer your questions. And as I mentioned, we're just seeking your comments today, and we'll bring this for your approval in July. Thank you.
Thank you, Hisham. That was comprehensive. So are there any questions here or comments from the board? If so, please raise your hand physically or use the raised hand feature. And I'm not seeing any questions at all. Okay, people approve. Terry Ann, do we have any written public comments on this item?
No written public comment.
And is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item? No?
No hands
Well,
raised.
Hisham, you did a real good job, so thank you very much. Okay, just informational tonight. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on, and our next item will be presented by Terry Ann Grover. She's going to discuss the conduct of meetings in June 2022. Terry Ann?
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and Representatives. Since October, as you know, the board has reconsidered the circumstances every 30 days and authorized meeting virtually under the Brown Act provision exemptions under Assembly Bill 361 through May 31st. Tonight, we are considering the conduct of meetings for June. AB 361 continues to apply through January 1st, 2024, when state or local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. The packet included the Contra Costa Health Services updated guidance for safely holding public meetings dated April 15th. This guidance was revised on May 16th and continues to encourage online meetings and is recommending a written safety protocol requiring social distancing and requiring or strongly encouraging masks for public meetings. The guidance further states that it is particularly important when community prevalence rates are high. Current trends as of May 16th in COVID-19 case rate, test positivity, and hospitalizations are increasing at this time. Therefore, the Authority Board has the option to continue holding its meetings solely remotely under this guidance from local officials, which recommends measures to promote social distancing. Our boardroom is still not ready for hybrid meetings. As you know, we ordered the equipment back in August to add a video component, and due to supply chain issues, it has still not been received, and we are expecting it in mid to late July, at which time the installation would still need to be completed. We are continuing to address the public access concerns with our building manager. The building doors are still locked, and we're in discussions with them. However, at this time, due to safety and security concerns, they do not have an established date for reopening the building doors. I am happy to report that the carpet tiles in the boardroom have been replaced. So we do have one project completed since our last discussion in March. Staff recommends that the Authority Board, having heard the circumstances and challenges and the recommendations from local officials, authorize staff to continue conducting meetings remotely through July with 30-day reconsideration. So we would reconsider it again at the June board meeting. That does conclude my presentation. I'm available to respond to any questions, and I look forward to receiving direction from the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry Ann. Dave?
Yeah, I would say through August. I mean, we're usually dark anyway, but that would give you more than enough time to do it. If we change our mind in July, so be it, but just know that we're aware of what your problem is. And I just don't think you're going to get it done before the September meeting, but my thoughts.
Yeah, Dave, I have to agree with you. I don't think it's possible to do it before that. I've been thinking about that. Any other comments, questions? No? Terry Ann, any written public comment, or does anyone from the public wish to speak on this item?
No written public comment. And it looks like no verbal comments either.
Okay, so we do have a motion then to continue. Is that correct, Terry Ann?
Yeah, staff
need
is
a motion.
recommending through July, but if
Right.
the board wanted to change that. That is.
I'll move the staff recommendation through
Second.
August.
Second,
Second the staff recommendation.
Okay, so a motion by Hudson, and I'll give second to Tom Butt through, Dave, is it when, through when?
Just as a point of procedure, Tom did staff recommendation, which I think was July. I made the recommendation to go through to the end of August and seconded.
My
I know.
mistake. I meant, I agree through August.
Okay,
Yeah, because we go dark in August?
yeah.
Yeah, okay, through August. Okay, any discussion? No? Terry Ann, could you call the roll on this item?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Arnridge,
aye.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Geringer,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner McGallion,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe.
Aye.
Sorry, did you say yes?
Aye.
Okay, sorry. Vice Chair Glover,
Yes.
Chair Kelly,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously with Commissioner White absent.
Okay, thank you, Terry Ann.
Thank you.
So our next regular agenda item is for the Planning Committee, and it's going to be presented by Matt Kelly, who's going to discuss the Measure J Growth Management Compliance Checklist. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. Good evening, Authority Board members. Matt Kelly, Senior Transportation Planner with CCTA. So tonight, I'm here to present the Measure J Growth Management Program Checklist and request its transmittal to the 20 jurisdictions. The GMP checklist is the mechanism for our local jurisdictions to demonstrate their compliance with the GMP, and that is in order to receive their 18% return to source funds from Measure J revenues, and as well as an additional 2.09% in some parts of the county. So these are the flexible local streets and road maintenance fund, or LSM funds, that may be used for a variety of transportation related expenditures, including maintenance of local streets and trails, filling potholes, local transit facility improvements like bus stops and things like that, as well as paying for staff time for RTPC activities. The current cycle will cover calendar years 2020 and 2021, so you'll be reporting on what you did over those 2 years, and that will trigger the release of LSM payments for fiscal years 21-22 and 22-23. CCTA's finance department has initially estimated the amount of those 18% funds at $19.4 million for fiscal year 21-22. However, that will be finalized later this summer once all tax revenues are accounted for. So the checklist itself contains 12 primary items that must be reported on by each jurisdiction. That includes the jurisdiction's progress on implementation of the local action plan, analysis of local development projects, maintenance of effort, the local urban limit line changes, if any, and reporting on the expenditures of those LSM funds. And it must be reviewed by the Citizens Advisory Committee. So staff is not proposing any changes to the checklist this cycle. However, we think it will be worth revisiting this ahead of the next cycle to address outcomes of some of our current planning efforts, including the countywide transportation plan and Vision Zero, among other efforts. So staff has, for this cycle, we've developed an online form for filling out the checklist, as well as submitting documentation and transmitting the final checklist to the authority. So we hope this online process should make it easier for staff to complete. And it will save probably a small forest along the way, as some of the checklists you guys submit exceed 400 pages of documentation. So a lot of paper saved there. And we also plan to take the new checklist to the RTPC tax over the next month and offer training to some of the new staff members locally, as many of our jurisdictions have lost their regular checklist preparer over the last few years. So we want to make sure that they have the training they need to put together and submit a checklist. So monies for the first fiscal year will be paid out starting in September, and that's to jurisdictions with an authority approved checklist. The off year, fiscal year 22-23, will be paid out on the anniversary of their checklist approval. So all checklists are due by June 30th, 2023. That's over a year from now. However, we encourage early submittal of the checklist in order to better manage staff time for review, as well as the CAC's review of the checklist. And also because the funding is available, starting after July 1st, and CCTA is basically sitting on the funds until the checklists are approved. So staff's recommendation tonight is to distribute the checklist, allowing jurisdictions to start submitting their completed checklists for review by the CAC and PC. And that's my report tonight. I can take any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. So any questions here from the board? Maureen?
By jurisdictions, do you mean like the regional committees, like WCTAC and so on?
The 19 cities and the county.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments here from the board? Terry Ann, any written public comment, or does anyone wish to speak from the public on this item on the GMP checklist?
No written public comments or verbal comments.
Okay, so then do we have a motion to approve distribution of this?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Arnrich, seconded by Noack. Any discussion? No, Terry Ann, can we have the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Arnrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Garinger,
Aye.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner McGallion,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Glover,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner White absent.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So moving ahead, Peter Engel is going to discuss an agreement with Bird Rides for a micro mobility pilot program. Peter?
Yes, thank you, Chair Kelly, and thank you, commissioners. I'll try and keep this brief. CCTA has embarked on an RFP or a procurement process to enter into an agreement for a shared micromobility program. I'm sorry, I'm a little thrown off. My primary camera went away, so I'm using my secondary camera here, and it's making me feel weird. Sorry.
Okay.
We started this process quite a while ago, actually, and it was part of the MOD project, the Mobility on Demand project, where we're trying to integrate micromobility into that particular application. And the city of San Ramon has been looking for a bike share program for several years, so I'm sure Commissioner Hudson will attest to. And so in working with the city, CCTA's role here has also been to engage other communities along the Iron Horse Trail corridor, including the town of Danville and Walnut Creek, as well as the county and East Bay Regional Parks with relationship to the Iron Horse Trail. So I won't go into a lot of detail on the procurement process itself. I think the staff report gives a lot of detail there. Ultimately, through the procurement process, we are proposing to select Bird as the vendor to provide the shared micromobility service. The service would start in the city of San Ramon, as far as the initial site for the pilot. It's a 2-year pilot that would include the increasing sites depending on local jurisdiction acceptance to Danville and the county and Walnut Creek, and potentially beyond there with discussions with Bird. So as part of the procurement process, Bird checked all the boxes that we were looking for. Again, we had a working group that include all the jurisdictions where we really discussed kind of the issues of, what are the pros, what are the cons, what are we looking for in a vendor, and we came up with a very solid list of local jurisdiction concerns and what they needed for response times and things like that. And Bird really checked all the boxes with regard to programs that serve low-income individuals or the unbanked population, mobility devices that were available to people with disabilities, although it's not necessarily shared, but it's they have all these programs in place that really serve all the different equity issues and program issues, response times to cities. They've been in the business as long as anybody, in shared micromobility. And when I say shared micromobility, I'm talking about scooter share and bike share, in this case, e-bikes. We do have a representative from Bird, Austin Marshburn, who is here. And Austin, give a little wave. He can answer any of your particular questions that you might have with Bird itself. The best news is, Bird is doing this on their dime. There's no public subsidy. Basically, they get their revenues back from their memberships and their per trip users. They have a great safety record. They have experience in suburban communities, Hollister and Healdsburg, to name a few. So we're very excited to be able to work with them as a partner as we move forward, not only with the city of Santa Ramon, but start to bring shared micromobility into Contra Costa County at a higher level. So I'll leave it at that and open up time for questions. Part of the agreement here is really to make sure that the indemnification clauses, all the insurance is available to us, just to make sure we're getting the program that we're looking for from data perspective, and be able to really move this forward as part of the authority's position in bringing alternative transportation to the county. So.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Mr. Marshburn, did you just want to say something? Maybe he's a little frozen. Dave Hudson?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in ahead of Sue, because frankly, Pleasant Hill, you really need to be part of this. This goes back to when Mike Szymanski and I were on East Bay Regional Park District Citizen Advisory. We were trying to get a bike share between Walnut Creek and Pleasant Hill. Back then, it was the county portion of it. That's why I just assumed you were in it. But this is going to come fast. We put into the analysis a 243% increase in bike over the share of Measure X, or whatever the last measure was, if it passed. And I can say with absolute certainty that I've seen at least that much increase in San Ramon alone during COVID. So yeah, this is good that there's a bunch of these different companies out there, whereas before MTC took over our pilot program at the Air District, we couldn't keep companies in. By 2018, there has to be at least a dozen of these things. So for Bird to win this, I'm pretty impressed that they're going to do what we've been hoping for some time, and that's to find some kind of docking for the electric vehicle. So yeah, I'm 100% behind this. I apologize, I have to duck out after this vote, but the sooner we get this started, the better. It's needed.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Sue Nowak?
So I was going to ask, this is primarily bicycles, because Bird did come and make a presentation to Pleasant Hill City Council, but we were discussing scooters at the time. And I don't know if Austin is aware of bicycle discussions as well, or just the scooter discussion that I know Pleasant Hill has had with Bird?
Yeah, Mr. Marshburn?
Yeah, so in general, I would say like this is a scooter. The vote you're having right now is for scooters, I believe, right? But in general, I'm pretty agnostic as to what people use to get themselves out of cars. So I'm very open to having a conversation about bikes and scooters and bikes. Yeah, my goal is to really help people make the right choice for the trip they're making. Specifically, you only cause mode shift if people enjoy where they're going, enjoy how they're getting there, and then realize that it's more efficient and a better option for them in that moment. In many cases, what we see is it makes sense to place a certain amount of bikes and a certain amount of scooters in each locality to make sure that people have the choice that's right for them nearby to them. So I'm open to both, is what I would say. I will say that bikes in general, they are more expensive. They are heavier. They're harder for you to find the right people that can actually maintain them. But so there are some extra issues with bikes, but generally meeting the user's need is what our goal is constantly.
Great, thank you. Peter, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I apologize. I should have mentioned. So the current proposal for San Ramon is 120 scooters and 30 bikes. So that it is a mix. And we have been working and we've had this discussion with Bird as part of the procurement process as to that mix and if it's appropriate. And Bird is absolutely open to, going, 3 or 4 months and seeing what the ridership is and what the mix is. And certainly that same situation is open for the other communities along that corridor. Is we just want to, it's going to take a little bit to find that right mix. And what Bird has kind of told us and working with the City of San Ramon staff is that, it's kind of a changing dynamic. And it was bikes and now it's scooters, and scooters are super popular. And Tim's waving his hand because he would prefer to ride a scooter. Or maybe some other reason he's waving his hand, I don't know. But e-bikes are kind of changing the game too. So, people are kind of, looking at e-bikes. So both are very popular and both are ridden a lot. And I think Austin would probably agree with that. And the fact is, like he said, that Bird is willing to look at those mixes and, they're doing this on their dime. So they obviously need to find the right mix that generates the best ridership, for them. So again, but they are absolutely working with the local jurisdiction staff to find the best locations to park these things and, the right mix to use.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Dave, did you want to say something?
As a clarifying point, I forgot to add that could be helpful for everyone in the end. The San Ramon just hired Chris Weeks, who was transportation for Bishop Ranch when they set up their bike sharing program, which they've had in there for at least a dozen years, it seems like. So yeah, this is definitely the time to do this. And I think you're going to see as we go into more and more of these overpasses, we're putting a dedicated bike lane on the Bollinger Canyon overpass that can be used for the AV. And we've got 2 million now towards Crow Canyon. I probably asked for the same thing. And that's going to be the new world order, is to prepare for more and more of these coming. But I just asked Amy to chime in. We must have 7,000 of these bikes on the peninsula. It's been going on for a long time now. It just took this long to get out here.
Thank you, Dave. Maureen?
Yeah, I may have missed it, but there are 120 scooters and 30 bikes. Are these going to be available to people? I'm not sure how that relates. Can you please let me know?
Yeah. So
Austin?
I'm sorry.
Or Chris, if you want to, it's fine.
No, just go ahead. Yeah, please.
Go ahead, Austin.
Okay, so essentially, Bird is a last mile micromobility program where we place bikes or scooters in the public right of way and allow users to reserve them, rent them by the minute. So there's an unlock fee, and then users can use them to go where they want to go. Specifically, we really focus on transit corridors, how to connect people to transit to make sure it really speaks to the conversation that Hisham was having earlier. But specifically, how do we help people to shift their mode so that they can think to take a scooter or a bike to a transit corridor, then to go where they want to go, making it possible that they do not that they no longer need to use a car for trips that maybe don't make sense for a car, or that are way too long to take on a car in a car if there's another option, right? And so there are some added benefits to it. Specifically, I truly believe that when you take a scooter for the first time or a bike for the first time, you get to where you wanted to go, but you realize, hey, that was actually pretty fun. And it's okay to have it be fun. Like when you get in a car, oftentimes, it gets you where you want to be, but that's important. That's very important. But you're not smiling when you get there necessarily. But it's okay to be happy when you get there and be like, that was actually part of the experience. And so that's an added benefit. But it also got you to where you wanted to go, right? And that's the big key. And so the real test here is whether or not we can make this work in San Ramon. I have no doubt we will. I head up our entire government relations team. We launched into 190 cities last year, many of them much smaller than San Ramon. But what we found is, when we did that, is in every size city, no matter what size city it is, there are holes in the transportation system and ecosystem, whether it's cars, whether cars are the main mode of transportation, public transportation, bikes. There's always a hole that something like a small micro electric vehicle can fill.
Right.
For
I think
residents.
that it's an excellent concept. But how do you pay for it? Does someone have to have a credit card or something to be able to do that? Thus limiting the people who can use it.
Multiple ways. So certainly one of the easier ways to pay is using a credit card. But when you use the Bird app, there are multiple ways to pay. So a credit card is one. You can use prepaid credit cards as well to pay. We also have, through a company called Pay Near Me, we have the ability to use cash to put money onto your account to pay. That is if you have a smartphone. All of those are smartphone enabled, but we also can allow people that do not have smartphones to use the service. I won't say that it's as easy as a smartphone because it's like in the name, smartphone, but you can text the actual Bird number, Bird ID, not a number, it's a string of letters, to a specific number. And with that, we will unlock the Bird for you, and you can then use the scooter and then lock it in the same way. So we really do focus on how can we make sure that low-income individuals in equity areas have access to really the ability to get to work or to get to where they want to do. Like, specifically, we find throughout the country that a certain percentage, called about 10% of people, don't have access to a car, or at least a reliable car. And that really makes a huge difference in all of the communities we serve.
Austin, we're kind of
not only,
okay.
Nope, sorry. Finally, I'm just saying there's a lot of ways to pay. I shouldn't do that, the rest of that part. And then we also make sure that equity, those people that qualify for equity grants, so SNAP programs, Pell Grant recipients would also receive 50% off of their permanent fee.
That's great.
Great, appreciate that. Any other comments or questions? And Terry Ann, any written comments from the public, or does anyone from the public wish to speak on this item?
No written comments, and it looks like no verbal comments.
Okay, so we have an agreement before us, number 585, with Bird to be the selected vendor for the 2-year shared micro mobility pilot program. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Nowak?
Oh, okay. Motion by Nowak, I think seconded by Geringer. Is that correct? Okay. Any discussion? Then Terry Ann, can we have the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Arnrich?
Aye.
Commissioner Butt?
Yes.
Commissioner Geringer?
Aye.
Commissioner Hudson? Oh, he left. Commissioner McGallion,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Glover,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Hudson and White absent.
Okay, well, thank you, Peter, and thank you, Austin Marshburn, for coming and joining us. And we look forward to seeing this micromobility program in San Ramon and other cities. So that's great. Thank you. Okay, so we're on to our last a regular agenda item, and I know you've all been waiting for this. And John Huang will be presenting the One Bay Area Grant Cycle 3 program and call for projects. John, you're on.
Good evening, Kelly and Commissioners. John Huang, Director of Planning. Along with me tonight is Colin Clark, who will be co-presenting this item. And again, staff is requesting your approval to release the proposed One Bay Area Grant Cycle 3 call for projects. And with that, we have a short slide slide deck, about 20 slides, which will be efficient as we go through it.
Okay, I see Colin holding up his hand.
Go back.
Did you want to say something? Colin?
Colin, I can share my slides, Colin.
Colin, let me make you a co-host again. Okay. You should have access to share and unmute.
Thank you. It wouldn't let me unmute myself, so I had no power whatsoever.
Sorry, I forgot you left and came back in.
I will share screen. Thank you for your patience.
So as we're pulling up the slide, I want to mention, first of all, that since the end of January, we've been developing this program, and I really want to mention that the staff at the cities, towns, and county, even the transit agencies that we've met with, and we presented this policy and program has really provided a lot of good feedback and input, and helped staff really improve the program that you're going to see tonight. Next slide, please, Colin. So we're going to take it back at the 30,000-foot level. Again, this money is coming from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and this is federal STP CMAQ funds. This funds comes to the county every 4 or 5 years through a OBAG, and this will be the OBAG 3 cycle. And total funds that's coming to the Bay Area region is approximately $680 million. Of course, MTC is going to take half of that for the regional programs, and the other half, $340 million, will be distributed to the county and local programs. So each of the 9 counties will receive an amount of money for their own respective county. The program will include $25 million towards Safe Route to School. And I'll revisit that Safe Route to School again a little bit later on in the presentation. The funding period will be fiscal year 22-23 through 25-26. So successful projects will be able to receive their funding at the earliest is October 23. Again, this program developed by MTC is really aligned with the Plan Bay Area 2050 strategies and federal performance goals. Next slide, please. Again, staying on the regional wide program, this is essentially a call for project from MTC. One thing I want to mention that based on federal requirements and audits from MTC, MTC cannot allocate funds anymore. And that trickles down to CCTA. So in the previous years where cities will be allocated funding for local streets and roads based by formula, population, and lane miles, we can't do that anymore. So that really made us look at different ways to administer this program through the county. Based on MTC's policy, MTC is really focused on priority development areas, PDAs, and also equity priority areas, communities, EPCs. Total amount of projects funded, MTC would like to have at least 70% invested in the PDAs and the transit-rich areas, including the EPCs. And MTC is also emphasizing funding targets towards active transportation, which is your bicycle and pedestrian projects, as well as Safe Route to School. And again, stressing the fact that these projects should be in the PDA areas. And MTC also requires project sponsors to provide to comply with requirements with regarding to housing, complete streets, safety plans, and the pavement management program. Next slide. Now we go down to the county level. So Contra Costa County, MTC has, there's two bullets here. So first of all, at the CCTA level, planning level, the CCTA will be receiving approximately 1 million over the 4-year period for our planning function. Separately, the county and the local programs will be looking at an amount of $47 million. Again, the terminology here is you see nomination amount and target amount. The target amount is what MTC has targeted Contra Costa to receive, and the nomination amount is 120% of the target amount. So MTC wants CCTA to submit 120% of the funding, of the targeted funding. So at the end of the day, CCTA will be submitting projects totaling 56.7 million approximately. Again, I want to emphasize that allocation by formula is not permitted this round. Next slide. As far as our prioritization criteria, we really take it right from MTC's list, which includes eligibility, deliverability, community support, and community served. Next slide. So there's a two-step process. As I mentioned, MTC is essentially issuing a call for projects. So once CCTA have come up with our own project list, we will be submitting that project list to MTC, and MTC will have a chance to review and score on top of that, add their own scoring on top of that project list. And at the end of the day, MTC will make the decision of which projects will be selected for funding. When I speak to the cities, I emphasize that we're not only competing within the county, but we're essentially competing with the other 8 counties and all the other projects too. So for the overall program balance, again, MTC is focused on PDA investment, Safe Route to School, and the bike ped and safety. And that's essentially where our program is really focused around. Next slide. Colin?
Yeah, it's not letting me do it anymore.
You want me to do it? Here, I can share my screen.
There it goes.
Okay, so our proposed program really focuses around Vision Zero and safety, primarily not only for pedestrian, cyclists, people with disabilities, motorists, basically focus on safety and Vision Zero in general, trying to reduce collisions between all modes and to eliminate fatalities. So the program, as noted here, the total nomination will come up with eventually is $56 million approximately. And half of the projects, half of the costs will be going towards the county-wide Smart Signals project, and half of the funding will be going towards active transportation and safety and the programmatic category. And again, for the Smart Signals project, CCTA, we're proposing that we be the project sponsor and submit the application for this project. CCTA staff, including myself, have been meeting with all the cities to take inventory of the current signal system within the county. And once we come up with an inventory, we'll find out what the needs are, and we're going to be putting together the projects for the smart signals. We're asking that the jurisdictions provide the match for the elements that are being implemented within that jurisdiction. The second category is active transportation and safety. We will be doing a call for projects for that category. And this category focuses on bicycle and pedestrian and primarily. And then the third category is the programmatic category, which focuses on safe out to school, non-infrastructure. And then so the call for projects will include the active transportation programmatic safe out to school. Next slide. So I will be covering the Smart Signals project, and then I'll be handing off to Colin to cover the active transportation and programmatic category. Again, the Smart Signals project really focuses around safety. We want to improve the safety, as I mentioned earlier, not only between vehicles, but vehicles and pedestrian and bicyclists and folks with limited mobilities. And at the same time, we can optimize mobility for all modes and we will also be setting up infrastructure to enable us to look at new innovative applications down the road. Next slide. Colin, do you want me to just run it?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this computer.
I apologize. I'm going to take over and just share my screen. Okay, can you all see it? I'm just going to go fast forward it too.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the Smart Signals is really to interconnect signal systems, not only within a city, a jurisdiction, but across the whole county. So we have 19 towns and cities and the unincorporated county. So the project really focuses on interconnecting these signals and upgrading the signal system, going away from the antiquated controllers and equipment and really bringing everything up to the 21st century. And again, our goal is to start at the at the bottom, the low-hanging fruits, and then build our way up into the system. Our preliminary estimate for implementing the whole smart signal system is in the range of $100 million. Right now, we're starting with the first phase using the OBAG funds to implement the first phase of the project. Again, the benefits will really improve multimodal safety, as I mentioned earlier, and minimizing collision fatalities and injuries. And a major, when I go and meet with all the cities, the different cities and towns, each cities are at different levels, at stages of their equipment. Some cities are really advanced, other towns and cities are not. So this project, we're really working with individual cities and finding out what the needs are and really focusing on bringing all the cities up to current standards. This is like the whole system you see at number 5 here. The system of systems is ultimately where we want to go. with this OBAC funds, we're going to look at the first elements, the signals, the controllers, the and all the equipment. We're looking at deploying CCTV cameras, closed circuit television cameras, and also video detection, not only for vehicles, but for pedestrian and bicyclists. This is just a snapshot of all the signals and intersection within the county that we're working with. So just a little bit under 300 traffic signals. That's what we're trying to interconnect. So you can see the magnitude of the project, and keep in mind that we're just trying to come up with the put together the information just to complete the application this time. But there's a lot of heavy lifting that's going to be done in the future. With that, I'm going to hand it out to Colin to cover the active transportation. Colin.
Great, thanks, John. So in terms of the active transportation safety portion of the program, eligible applicants include jurisdictions of county, unincorporated cities, towns, BART, transit agencies, East Bay Regional Park District, for example, and WICTEC, for example, as a joint powers authority. The main requirement is that from MTC is that Caltrans, there's a master agreement in place between the agency and Caltrans. And so possible partner agencies are the public health folks at Contra Costa Health Services and other special districts. There is a local match similar to all the other funds, the minimum federal requirement of 11.47%, with the minimum grant amount being proposed to be $500,000 and a maximum of 2 applications per jurisdiction, with the county being allowed up to 4. And then the projects are encouraged to be bundled across jurisdictions. And so especially as it relates to Vision Zero and the Safe Systems approach, the projects that bundle like projects across jurisdictions will compete better at the countywide and the regional level in terms of the 9 counties and MTC scoring system. Jurisdictions must comply with housing and transportation policies, including the local road safety plan, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Next slide. In terms of eligible projects types, primarily serving people walking, biking, rolling, including scooters and other micromobility devices. But the eligible project types do include repaving projects that address complete streets within the scope, and the pedestrian walkways, in addition to safety projects such as roundabouts that are well known to reduce air pollutants, greenhouse gas emissions, and severity of each collision. Those are the types of projects that will likely score well at the countywide and region level. And of course, the 70% of funds needing to go in PDAs. And the bundling is meant to hopefully include jurisdictions that have areas not necessarily in PDAs. Eligible projects are more geared towards construction. However, if there's an application that includes design and construction, that could be considered. Next slide. The programmatic portion of the program, in particular for safe routes to school and non-infrastructure projects, is meant to address applications that are non-infrastructure projects that address, for example, with safe routes to school, the 6 E's and anticipated outcomes in terms of improving safety, increasing walking and biking rates to and from school, addressing congestion, and public health issues like childhood obesity, air quality, and community involvement. So partnerships also that are among individual schools or school districts, local agencies, cities, parent and other associations, other stakeholders are eligible to work together on submitting an application. Also, projects that MTC is trying to encourage projects that have been through a community engagement process and are included in a locally adopted plan. So those will tend to score better. However, this has been written up in a way that allows for quick build projects to show demonstration projects that are potentially temporary in nature or multi-years in nature before a more permanent solution is implemented and constructed, so that the community can have the opportunity to experience different types of facilities. The application form is meant to be online and hopefully easier as a result for local agencies and other jurisdictions. And next slide. Some examples from the Vision Zero countywide effort that was adopted in September of 2021. Some of the safe systems approach data analysis findings concluded that some of the most common countywide collision patterns were had a lot of the similar characteristics. And so when those are addressed across jurisdictions and bundled into a single project, for example, trail crossings or transit priority areas, seniors and youth, highway interchanges, right turn slip lanes, and unprotected left turns at signals, for example, all of those are examples of projects. And next slide. In terms of local road safety plans, so MTC has adopted the policy that was coming out of Caltrans for the HSIP Cycle 11 program, which was just recently announced and has a submittal due date for applications in September. That's the Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP Cycle 11 from Caltrans. And so MTC is using a similar policy in terms of requiring a local road safety plan be adopted by December 31st of 2023 for each eligible applicant. And the authority with its countywide Vision Zero guide is encouraging a safe systems approach be used in each of the local road safety plans that get adopted and result in a project list that is shared with the authority. And we've been working closely with each of the jurisdictions to make some progress on the local road safety plans, in particular to get some draft project lists that might help inform the OBAG 3 and other funding source opportunities. Next slide.
Okay, thanks, Colin. So I'm just going to wrap this up with the schedule. This is the implementation schedule from MTC. It's a really condensed schedule, really tight schedule. And I want to also mention that the program that we've laid out that you just saw, we've actually vetted through MTC staff, and they're on board with the concept of the 3 categories and understand what we're trying to do with the program. So lastly, this is the schedule. As I mentioned at the beginning, we started this whole process back in January. We've actually gone through all the RTPCs and vetted the policy framework. And last month, we took to the TCC and the CBPAC to get the final inputs into the document. As you can tell, due to the tight schedule, we actually did not take it. We're not able to take it to our PC planning committee, but we've taken directly to the board tonight, and that's May 18th tonight. With your approval of the program, we will be releasing the call for projects starting by Friday on May 20th, and the applications will be due July 15th. Our intention is to bring back to the board the final list of project nominations on September 21st and submit the final project list to MTC by September 30th. With that, Colin and I will gladly answer any questions you may have. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you, John and Colin. That's quite a mouthful here. Yeah, so if we could come back to the gallery view.
He needs to stop screen
Connor
sharing.
Colin,
Oh,
Yeah, he needs to
Stop
stop.
sharing.
It stopped screen sharing.
I think, or John.
Yeah, hang on. Oh, I'm sorry.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. So Newell?
Thank you. Kevin, thanks. That was a pretty detailed presentation, but I have a high level question. There was a lot of concern early on in MTC putting pretty onerous changes on the rules. And just to be clear, from my seat, it looks like nobody's eligible for any of this money unless you have a PDA, TDA, or a community of concern. Is that true? That's the way I read all the criteria. I know Amy's shaking her hair, but I want to hear from you. Because we were all being told we had to make all these changes to be eligible for this money. This is federal money that now another agency has put on their priorities and their decision-making for our tax dollars. So how many cities are not going to be eligible for this money?
Well, their criteria is, yes, focusing on PDAs and TRAs, but they're asking for at least 70% of the project, of the total project. So, for instance, as long as we meet that 70% minimum criteria, the county, that our project list is will be okay.
So, but back to my real question then. So they're saying minimum, but they've basically told all of us that's their priority. For cities that can't comply because they don't, we just sit back and watch, and they're the ones making the decisions. We're not. So what happens to those cities, and there are several of us, that don't comply? And it's nothing we can do about that. It just has to do with a long list of reasons, but
I think all cities, if I'm not mistaken, have some type of PDA within the city.
yeah, you got to have the 15-minute headway and stuff. They're not legitimate. Lots of people try, but if you don't have the right transportation, it's fake, and it actually wasn't approved by them. So anyway, that's my point. I'm really concerned about this. This is, I'll be honest, this presentation sounds like we're the mouthpiece, to be blunt, for MTC, who has their own agenda, which doesn't include Contra Costa County. They're not treated as well. The amount of money that is allocated for us from RM3 along the list, we are the stepchild that does not get treated fairly. And the changes they made, and while they say minimum 70%, it's their criteria and their decision. They can do 100%. We don't have any control of that. And it's just that I think it's really important, I think, for the person who represents all the 19 cities, is to make sure that we represent that there needs to be what we call equity, is not just equity based in economics, equity as in the actual cities and the things like that. We all have constituents. We all need to have interconnect. We all need to do this, but we don't all meet this new criteria. And it's totally unfair. And we shouldn't just acquiesce to that policy. We should always, at the beginning of that list, say, this is important to us. And because we are different than the other Bay Area, and there's going to be other Bay Area cities that have similar things. So just, I hope we keep that in mind and that we advocate for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Maureen?
I agree with Noel. I mean, as I was listening to this, it really sounds like a top-down proposal. I think we need to be careful about what we are able to get and be aggressive. But I do have a couple of specific questions. One has to do with signal design. And you didn't mention anything about bus traffic having a right of way at intersections. I think that would be an important addition if you haven't thought about it by now. Everybody else could have right of way too, but when buses get there, they need to go faster. So because one of our concerns, of course, has been said before, is that the amount of time that it takes from point A to point B. The other thing I noticed, since I'm from West County, is that the Richmond area is very, it seemed to be the most dense area of signals and concerns. I wonder if you've thought about that. West County needs support, and I'm hoping that the RTPCs are getting a lot of information about this and that we will be able to have input in the future. Thanks.
Okay, I'd like to respond to that, to the chair.
Yeah.
So yes, so I think we've heard that transit is important, and that list that I showed you on the slide there is not a comprehensive list. We did hear that TSP, transit signal priority, is important, and also Q-jump lanes. So that was brought up by a jurisdiction. So all that will be included. We will be meeting with the transit agencies also to see what projects are priority to the transit agencies, as well as meeting with all the cities. And to these, I forgot what the second point.
Thank you. WCTAC has often felt like the bottom of the barrel somehow.
Okay, Amy?
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to add some comments in terms of the staff presentation. And first of all, John and Tim and the staff, Colin, I want to thank you very much for working with all the cities, but also working closely with MTC staff on this policy. This policy was one that involved the cooperative working of all the transportation authorities in the region, as well as the commissioners. It's always, and I completely understand, it's been a challenge over the cycle of the OBAG as requirements continue to evolve. That being said, I think that if you review the staff presentation, there are opportunities for all the cities in Contra Costa County to apply and be successful in receiving funding. I think the signalization focus is going to be very competitive in terms of providing transit priority for areas throughout the county. The bike and pedestrian safe routes to school, access to transit categories are going to be, that's why the safety programs that our cities are putting together are really important. The other thing to note that ABAG considers all communities that either have an adopted PDA or a planned PDA that, even if it never went through the final approval process, are eligible for including applying for funds in that 70% of the PDA opportunity. That 70%, I think it's a number which provides that 30% of the funds in Contra Costa County and around the region can come from non-PDA areas. There is not going to be pressure to increase that percentage. Again, we've advocated very strongly for that. The other area, so in looking at applications that cities will be submitting, it's important to really look at the criteria that's been identified in the plan that our staff has put together, which I think will enable cities to successfully compete for projects. Again, there's a different emphasis. When OBAG 1 started, it was basically paving streets and roads. The region and the state have moved into much more active transportation programs, also looking at equity issues relative to transportation investments, and finally looking at how we can support our existing transit infrastructure with transportation investments. And one of the big areas, of course, that a lot of our communities are going to be looking at are safe routes to school and bicycle, pedestrian, active transportation access to transit, whether it's bus or rail. So there's no doubt that the funding requirements have evolved, and it is a challenge for all of us. I completely understand the frustration from some cities, but I do believe, based on the work that our staff here at CCTA has done, is that there are opportunities for all the cities to apply for these OBAG grants, especially in line with the RENA work that the cities are doing too. So supporting affordable housing is also going to be a priority for investment dollars. So I think there are a number of options that are available. And again, I want to thank staff for working hard to focus our local programs so that our cities can be competitive in terms of achieving these federal funds that are should be coming to our residents in our county and our cities. So thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Tim Hale?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to respond to Commissioner Armour's comments and some of the other comments. So if it looks and feel like this is a top-down approach, because it is a top-down approach, unfortunately, and I'll just say that the 9 Bay Area executive directors really, this was a fight with MTC in terms of the guidelines and how to really push for what we were looking for. In the end, based on the 9 executive directors in the 9 Bay Area counties, what we actually have in front of us is basically the balance of that. And I'll say that during that process, we've been vocal. I've been very vocal in terms of geographic equity in Contra Costa County. It's really a priority for us. We did look for flexibility in that 70% PDA. We did not get it. And so that was a comment from multiple counties. And so, and what we will plan on doing, and MTC staff has guaranteed that they will work closely with each of the individual county staffs during the evaluation process. So that way we can be certain that how they're allocating the funds and programming the funds really meets the goals of each of the counties. And so in terms of the advocacy issue, Commissioner Armich, we will continue to promote that as we're working with staff. We will work with our MTC commissioners to do that as we see drafts of project lists and so forth. So we will be working closely with staff as we did when we did the quick build project a couple years ago. We worked really closely with staff and we were successful there. And so we plan to be successful again in terms of making sure we meet all our goals in the county. And I'll just say that, and I was going to save this for my executive director report, but it's not over either. MTC has created this transit-oriented community policy that's going to guide OBAG 4 funding. And so it's not over in terms of what additional requirements will be put on future federal discretionary funding. So something for us to keep in mind and think about as we kind of look towards the future.
Thank you, Tim. Other commissioners? Questions? Well, Tim and John, I just have a question. If a small city wants to apply for a grant and the minimum is 500,000, do they, and they don't want a lot of money, but they want some money for, say, their bike and ped projects, will they be considered even if they're just small, or do you think MTC will want to award monies to the larger, more far-reaching projects?
What we've been communicating with the cities and is that try to look at bundling different locations together for similar types of projects and working with neighboring cities and again, trying to meet that minimum. If it comes close to it, again, that's what MTC wants to look at is a minimum of 500,000. But if we can come up with a project that's less than that, we'll still, and it's a good project, we'll still move that along too. And again, it's going through a review panel, a review process based on panels made up of the city staff. So that's going to be evaluated as such. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I understand, John, and my only other comment is that, for some cities who don't have a lot of staff, this is a really short period of time to submit. I mean, just 2 months, and right now our cities are in budget season. And so, it seems to favor the larger entities that have, projects just sitting around that they can take off the shelf and prepare for this. So I hope we do see some kind of equity. Any other comments from commissioners? Terry Ann, do we have any written comments or other comments? Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this item?
No written or verbal comments.
Okay. So, John, we want to move this forward, that's correct?
Yes.
So we need a resolution or authorization?
Yes.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to move this forward for OBAG 3?
I'll move it, but
Okay, motion by Bud. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Geringer.
Okay, second by Geringer. Any comments? No, Terry Ann, please call the roll.
Commissioner Arnrich,
Sorry, but somebody has to do it. No.
Commissioner Butt,
yes.
Commissioner Geringer,
Aye.
Commissioner McGallion,
No.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Absolutely not.
Chair Kelly.
Yes.
Okay, we had 3 commissioners leave, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses, so the motion does not pass. Yes.
Okay. Well,
I'd
I
consider, well, I guess we can't, it's done, but I was gonna say if there was a motion that had included an advocacy role, even though we talked about it, to MCC, we can talk beautiful and everything, we're screwed. And I gotta be blunt. I've heard it in other conversations with other people. I've heard it. MTC has their agenda and it doesn't include us. And it's just hard for organizations to sit back and realize we're not going to participate. We're not going to get anything out of this. And, it took longer to talk about it than we get the opportunity to prepare for it. So that's kind of backwards. So, leave it to you, Tim. Where are we at?
Teresa, did you want to say something?
I think
Sue
Commissioner
had her
Nowak,
hand-
did you want to say something before I jump?
Sue had hers up, and then I do have a
Okay,
question
so we'll go to
after.
Sue and then we'll go to you and then we'll go to Tim.
Well, I just wanted to ask, by voting no, are we unable to do a call for projects at this point? Despite, I totally understand Noel's point. And, I've made some comments earlier about some of the concerns on this as well. And I don't think anybody's terribly happy with what this is, but if we vote no on this, does that mean we cannot call for projects under whatever circumstances that exist?
Yes, through the chair, yes, to respond to that, Commissioner Nowak. Yes, the request was for the board to approve the program and call for projects. And the call for project is really based on the program that we've set out.
So we can't, at this point, we are unable to submit projects and call for projects? Is that what I'm hearing?
The way I understand it is staff cannot release the call for projects.
And so we can't put in for the project for the signals or any other projects that
No.
we're looking at?
No.
Just a question, is there any criteria in this that we actually have any decision making? So if we don't, then what is the action?
So let me, but maybe Representative Powers, would you like to say something before I chime in?
And Teresa Geringer wanted to speak as
No,
well.
not yet. Go ahead.
No, I want to hear what Tim has to say.
Tim Hale?
Okay, so if we don't release this call for projects, then no one's going to be able to apply for this funding in Contra Costa County. And so we do have decisioning power here in terms of MTC has been really clear in terms of the requirements that they have. And they've been really clear that they're planning on meeting the target amounts and the nomination amounts in OBAG 3. So if we do not submit any projects, then we're basically foregoing $47 million into Contra Costa County. So we do have the ability to select the projects, select Vision Zero projects, the Smart Signal project, bicycle projects, Safe Route to School projects. And as we have been working with all the local jurisdictions through this process, we will have a really coordinated approach to make sure that we're maintaining that geographic equity throughout the entire process, even within the constraints. And that's why staff has proposed the types of projects that we've selected in terms of the guidelines. Is one, it'll be highly competitive at the regional level, so we can get to that $47 million. But it'll also allow us the flexibility to meet that geographic equity. And I can assure you that during this entire process, as we have been doing through this process, there will be strong advocacy with MTC staff and to make sure that we maintain our selection process, our geographic equity with all the projects. I mean, this is the funding does not all have to go to PDAs. It's that 70%. I mean, we will do the best to meet that requirement, but we are certain that even with that requirement, we'll be able to make sure that there's geographic equity throughout the entire county. And so if we do not vote yes on this call for projects, then we will not get any portion of OBAG 3 whatsoever and not have any of that $47 million in the Contra Costa County.
If our motion or staff report said what you just said, I'd support it, but it doesn't say that. So if there's a motion that would have said that, it'd be supportable. Tim, what you just said is what I want to hear. But it's not what's in there. And that's where we just is like putting a rubber stamp saying, hey, MTC, we believe in everything you're doing. Thanks for not listening to us. Thanks for not doing any of this. But what you just said is exactly what this ordinance ought to say, or this proposal to release those.
So at this point, is there a possibility to have another motion that would approve it along the lines of what Tim Hale just said?
Madam Chair, I think one of the three people who voted it down, I believe they do have the ability to
ask for reconsideration.
And I would be more than happy to ask for reconsideration and would be more than happy to find out if, like Newell said, is there some amendment that can be made or something that further that can be done?
Yes, and is it possible then to either come back to the motion and reconsider it and to possibly add on what Newell had proposed? Tim, can you advise me here?
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer to David McCray, our legal counsel, but
Yeah.
I believe that if we have another motion, we can go ahead and move forward with the vote. So if you want another staff recommendation, I would say staff seeks approval of releasing the OBAG 3 call for projects with being able to meet all of the MTC requirements in terms of advocacy, but also working closely in terms of having geographic equity through the entire county as we move through the process of OBAG 3, as we select the projects. And like I said, we will have strong advocacy for that as we're moving through the process in OBAG 3 as we're selecting the projects.
Okay. Does that meet your concerns, Noel and Tim?
I would support that. And I
You
would
would
make that
support-
as a motion.
Great.
If
Okay, and then Tim, are you going to second
David's
that?
okay that we do it.
I
this way.
will.
David, are you all right with this?
I am, as long as we've captured that. Terry Ann, did you capture the new resolution, staff resolution there at this point, what Tim just said?
Yes, I did.
And
So
it's
there's-
recorded, so.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's
I will
recorded.
record both in the minutes.
Okay.
Okay, great. So we have a
Yes, thank you.
motion by Arnrich, seconded by McGallion. Then Terry Ann, can we take the roll on this motion?
Yes, Commissioner Arnrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Geringer,
Aye.
Commissioner McGallion,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
She does not appear to be on.
she's not on. Okay, Commissioner Nowak,
Yes?
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Chair Kelly.
Yes.
Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yeses. Motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Hudson, Mitchoff, White, and Vice Chair Glover absent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. So that concludes the regular agenda items. So now we move on to Authority Board and staff comments. I don't have any real detailed comments tonight, but the only thing that I really want to, and I've been talking with Tim about this, is as we move forward with all of our different projects, I think one of the main things we need to do is to communicate to the public, realistically, what we're doing and how it benefits them. And as I said, if it's just little Vimeos on social media, if it's holding events in parks or at fairs or things like that, and it's a long-term effort. But we're never going to be able to, get to another measure if we don't start really reaching out and trying to let the public know, what we're doing. We've got a lot of exciting things here, but we really need to market it well, and we need to meet the residents where they are. So I know Lindsay's really thinking about that, and Tim Hale's thinking about that. All of staff is, but that's something that I keep, thinking about all the time. So that's all that I have tonight. Let's move on. Are there any comments from commissioners? If so, please raise your hand. Yes, Sue Nowak?
I just wanted to thank Tim came to our city council and talked about a lot of the exciting things that were going on at CCTA, and I appreciate that. And hopefully we actually had a large crowd at that city council because of a follow-on topic, but it was really helpful because everybody was on there to discuss land use alternatives for our general plan. And so there was a lot of people concerned about that. So I think it was good for that many people to have seen Tim's presentation, talking about all the things going on to impact mobility and transportation around the county in the face of us all facing a pretty significant RHNA numbers that we have to plan for. So I just want to thank Tim for that. And I think that's helpful for everybody to hear that kind of presentation.
Thank you. And I know Tim's going around to all of the different cities. He'll be coming to mine as well. Any other comments from commissioners? Any other comments from any representatives?
Yes.
Yeah, Maureen?
Tim, would you come to a Crockett Lions Club meeting?
Yes.
Great, I'll invite you.
Okay, any other comments from commissioners? No, then Tim, do you have a report for us?
I always have a report for you. I'm not going to let you get off that easy. So, Madam Chair Kelly, thank you for the comments about the public outreach. I think that's really important, and I've been mentioning this actually at the city council meetings that I've been going to, and we really welcome any opportunity to interact with the public in your communities. If there's any opportunities, do that, whether it's concerts in the park or art and wine festivals or barbecues or whatever the case may be in terms of your local community summer events. We would like to know that. I know some of you have sent me some information on that. And so we definitely want to get out in the community and talk about what we're doing, especially as it relates to the countywide transportation plan. And also with the countywide transportation plan, Terry Ann will be reaching out to all of you. I think it's a good opportunity, probably in the fall timeframe, to actually do a board retreat. You may have remembered that we did one back in January of 2019. And so we might do a 2-day board retreat where we bring our city managers from our various cities and town managers to really talk about and shaping the future of transportation in Contra Costa County. And we want to really use that as an opportunity to have a really open dialogue about what we see as the needs for transportation. The other thing that's really been top of mind for staff, and I can't thank staff enough of how great they are and how committed they are to what we're doing at CCTA, but is this mega grant. You may have noticed in the ED report, we are making the rounds with our federal delegation and really working hard to position ourselves for success on this mega grant for the 680 corridor. We actually formally call it 680 Forward because we have other components to the Innovate 680 program. And so far, it's been very well received in terms of the program and the ask, which is about $395 million for the overall program. The other thing I wanted to mention too, I mentioned this at APC, but the transit-oriented community policy, the revised version of that did come out, and there was a meeting actually last Friday with the joint MTC ABAG Ledge Committee meeting, and there has been some significant changes to that policy based on from a lot of the comments that they've received from the 9 Bay Area transportation agencies, as well as definitely from CCTA. I personally have been working with MTC staff on those changes on TOC policy. I know John Hong, our director of planning, has been working really closely with MTC staff, and they basically now are focusing the policy on fixed rail transit and not just bus transit. And so that's a huge deal because it really provides a lot of flexibility in terms of where we're going to be looking to put, meeting the density, the housing density requirements that are in the policy. And like I mentioned earlier, those requirements are going to be tagged onto future OBAG funds in terms of OBAG 4. So it's really important that we get this policy straight and right. We are evaluating the current policy to see if we have any additional comments. We are currently reaching out to jurisdictions right now to see if they have any additional feedback or comments. So far, we haven't heard any major issues with the current version of the policy from our local jurisdictions. And so we're drafting a letter right now with a few comments. The other thing is, in terms of the mega grant, I wanted to also talk about the federal regional strategy. We ourselves in Contra Costa County, we did solicit what projects each of the cities would want to look at in terms of federal funding. We're keeping track of that. There's a number of notice of funding opportunities that are coming out. The safe streets for roads for all. NOFO came out this week. So we're looking at how we can bundle Vision Zero projects to be more competitive at the national level, so we can get more additional dollars for Vision Zero type projects. And we're also identifying future grant opportunities such as carbon reduction, electrification, and ferry, as well as innovative technology grants, all that are planning on coming out this year. There's a slew of grants that are coming out this year. And Lindsay and I are actually going to be going out to DC in mid-June to be talking with our federal delegation and departments about a lot of the grant opportunities, but also to continue to position ourselves for the mega grant. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is we had an interesting meeting with Caltrans District 4 about their new highway investment approach in terms of basically looking at all projects in the pipeline and whether they're going to continue to support them based on whether these projects are adding additional capacity. This gets back to the whole SB 743 and VMT. It was a very interesting conversation. Basically, a lot of our projects are capacity enhancing. And so right now they're really pointing to the Innovate 680 program as really the model for the Bay Area as well as for the state of California in terms of having a network of projects that's going to be doing VMT mitigation for the capacity enhancing projects. And so, but on the flip side of that conversation, they are going a bit on the extreme side in terms of saying that we have to mitigate all the way down to zero, which is really challenging and very, very expensive. And so I do plan to reach out to Caltrans, and I know Terry Ann might be reaching out to you to have a discussion about that relative to Innovate 680, and how we may be dealing with the SB 743 approach that the state is taking. I wanted to end on a positive note. So Lindsay and I actually had an opportunity to go and see a Femineers showcase. You may remember that CCTA actually started the Femineers program at Ignacio Valley High School back in October of last year. And so today was a showcase to really see all the students and what they're doing. And so I wanted to kind of share this really, really cool video with all of you. These are all of the wonderful students that have worked on robotics projects based on the funding that CCTA was able to bring through sponsors from our A&E partners, particularly Stantec, to really make this happen and come to real life and fruition. So it was really exciting to see how this program has really changed these girls' lives, and it's really made them interested in STEM and into robotics and what they can do with their future careers. So really, really fun, and I'm just excited that CCTA was actually part of it. So that concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions or comments you might have.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. Thank you, Tim. Any questions? No?
No,
Marie?
no questions, just a comment. And I did love the end. I think everyone said did too. So what a great thing we're doing.
Yeah. Okay, well, if there are no other comments, then the calendars were provided in your packet, and we will adjourn now to the next meeting on June 15th at 6 p.m. And we are adjourning now at 11 p.m. Good night, everyone.
Good night.